Eimear, I hope you've been spotting up on Premiership football leagues, etc., because I'm going to throw really difficult questions at you around that.
I'm glad Niall isn't in the room then, because I get slagged so much for, he says you're very patriotic, except when it comes to supporting our poor Irish team.
Oh,
Because
really?
I'm always like, oh, it's so boring.
But and also you're our resident expert in sports stars behaving badly at this stage.
I don't know. Well, again, Niall says that I give poor Conor McGregor a hard time, but not so much with the cleaner sports.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're talking about Anthony Stokes, who at 15 signed for Arsenal and at 36 is behind bars in Mountjoy Jail. Such a fall from grace, really.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about him.
Well, so he's actually not behind bars at the moment because he was let out on so he appealed straight away. He gave €1,000 bail, and he was let out to appeal the sentence. So he's he did plead guilty now. So he pleaded guilty to possession of almost €4,000 worth of cocaine and four dangerous driving offences, but he's obviously not happy with the fact that he was jailed. So
for what, 15 months?
15 months, yeah. So
he's appealing the severity of that.
Well, I assume so because he pleaded guilty. So usually that would be the sentence. That's the issue. Maybe he wasn't expecting to be jailed because he pleaded guilty. But the case had actually been suspended, or the case had been adjourned for a month because they wanted to get the results of, he was undergoing drug treatment, and they wanted to get results of that for the report for the judge, and there were still traces of drugs in his system. And I think then the judge wasn't just the main reason, but one of the reasons then that he was jailed. So he was let out on appeal, but he did get a 15-month sentence. And I suppose what we did last Sunday is Patrick O'Connell obtained video of him before he was caught by the guards in the dangerous driving offences. So he was basically doing speeds. He was sitting there in his car. It's kind of grainy footage, but you can see him from a side profile. And the car reaches up to speeds of, I think it was generally 160 kilometres per hour, but it reaches speeds up to 210 kilometres, which, is,
and he's filming himself.
Well, he's being filmed by somebody else. And he's making comments like, "Catch me if you can, bro." And you can see his tattoos and his fancy watch and all this kind of thing. He was driving a Volkswagen Golf. But they can
GTI
be,
things.
they can be quite.
I used to have one of them.
Oh, really?
I did, yeah. I was always getting speeding tickets and fines and points and everything in it. Yeah, I had to get rid of it.
So it was the Golf's fault. It wasn't your fault.
I've got a few kind of fast cars that have got me into trouble, I have to say. But I mean, I have to say, 200 is a frightening speed for anybody to be travelling at. Yeah,
well, the court had 160, but you can see in the video that it's getting up to that. Yeah. So, even 160 is frightening. It's crazy. And he's speeding past emergency services, fire brigades at the time as well. Right. So it's not exactly, he's obviously in a.
So when did this happen?
So this happened in 2023.
January, was it?
January 2023. Yeah. So basically he was pulled over after midnight for the massive speed he was doing. And then there was a short foot pursuit. So he basically tried to leg it. Right. He was pursued by the guards. Then they searched the car and they found nearly €4,000 worth of cocaine in a sock in an air vent in the car. And he also pleaded guilty. So he was before the courts last week. He also pleaded guilty to possession of 86 illegal tablets in Cabinteely about 10 days after the traffic incident. So,
where was he pulled over? Did you remember, or did they come up in the? Was it on a kind of a main motorway road, or was he doing those speeds kind of in more built up areas?
And he was pulled over in Walkinstown Avenue.
Oh, so right. Built up area.
Yeah, it is
housing,
built up. Yeah,
kind of lots of housing around there.
Yeah. So when the guard gave evidence about how they activated the patrol lights and he failed to stop, and then he continued on to the Long Mile Road, which is obviously a very, very busy road. After midnight isn't can be busy enough at that time as well. He drove to Nace Road, continued on to the Ballyfermot Road, broke loads of red lights, and then he continued down onto, coming onto Chapel Is a bypass and speeds of 160 kilometres, and then broke more lights, and then almost collided with a car, according to the guards. So, this was a chaotic situation. Yeah. And he had a passenger in the car, obviously, as the video shows. Then he went up towards the Phoenix Park, and then he abandoned the vehicle, and then was basically tried to get away. And when he was brought to the Crumlin Garda station, they searched the car, and that's when they found the cocaine in wraps in a sock, and then his DNA was on the sock as well. So I suppose the guilty plea was going to come.
Yeah, because there was so much sort of evidence up against him.
Yeah.
So at 15, we said he was signed for Arsenal, and he was kind of being hyped as the best player Ireland had as well.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, as a youth player, he was, considered one of the next big things. And then he was, he also had a career with Celtic as well, which I think, was probably the height of his career. And he played for Sunderland as well. So he was. And then
that was kind of. So we're talking that's 21 years ago now.
Yeah.
So basically, from 15 to 25, he was kind of really making waves in football, and he was seen as So there's something there I'm reading just about him, because I do not claim to be any class of an expert on it. But in Alison O'Reilly wrote in The Examiner that he was regarded as the hottest prospect to come out of Ireland in a generation. Arsenal's youth development head Liam Brady, who knew more than most about making it to the top, said the sky was the limit for him.
Oh yeah.
And he said that he expected, so Brady, it's quoted as having said, he expected him to challenge players like Thierry Henry for a place at Arsenal. He's a very creative, inventive player, he said in 2003. He can score goals, but he's also the kind of player who doesn't necessarily depend on other players to help him score them. So in other words, he was an independent force to be reckoned with on the pitch.
Absolutely,
now, going forward to 2011, he starts hitting the headlines for the wrong reasons. He's coming to the front of the paper rather than the back.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. And he still would have been playing at the time as well. So this was all coinciding with his playing career. And obviously, he has an assault conviction from 2013. So you're not talking about somebody who, his career may have come to an end and then couldn't, because you hear these stories about footballers not being able to cope with the aftermath. This was, someone that could have probably continued on if he hadn't gotten himself into trouble. So this is, 11 years ago that he was first in trouble. That he first came to courts here.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised reading that he only has one prior assault conviction in the Irish courts from 2013.
But previous to that, wasn't it 2012 when he was photographed at some sort of a memorial for Alan Ryan, the former head of the Real IRA, who'd been murdered, I think, in 2012.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of sort of toxicity around Alan Ryan and people he hung out with. But he was photographed at some sort of a fundraiser for that. Now, that was not a place to be seen.
No, of course. And especially when you're playing for, your national team and all that kind of thing, it creates negative attention that maybe where you want the focus to be on the pitch. So no, that was probably the start of it. And then he was has assault conviction for attacking a Elvis impersonator.
Oh.
And there was a huge compensation order. I think it was over €200,000 made against Stokes for that assault. And we've interviewed that impersonator several times, and he doesn't seem to have ever paid it from the last time we spoke to him, that he hadn't received the money. Now, he did do an interview in another publication after Stokes' jailing offence or jailing for the most recent offence, and he said that he basically seemed to have sympathy for Stokes now, and he said that he blamed the state for getting him to go ahead with the assault conviction, but he did seem to at the time have suffered a lot of emotional distress, so that's where that 2013 conviction comes from.
Right. Now he's defended himself for attending the Ryan event many years ago, and he says that he knew him for a long time, that he did some security for his father, is he adopted? His adoptive father, he calls him John Stokes. He is a staunch Republican who bought that Players Lounge pub in Fairview in North Dublin, which of course was in another part of the forest, it was the subject of shootings, because certainly around the time when there was a hit out on Alan Ryan, didn't the notorious Alan Wilson sort of do a drive-by and shot, sporadically at it. There was loads of people injured and
there was 2 people injured, I think. And he actually, it was only when he was done for a plot to kill during the Kinahan feud that while he was in jail for that, then I think there was a guilty plea entered, wasn't there, for the shooting in the Players Lounge. So he'll serve both of those sentences simultaneously. But that's how that's in the news. So obviously there's been...
Is the players' lounge still open?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so, no.
But there was an awful lot of kind of activity around the Real IRA and the Ryan brothers and all. And obviously he's now saying that, Alan Ryan did the security for his father there.
Yeah.
And that's probably why they would have been, Ryan and his cohorts would have been there. But
and he was playing for Celtic at the time as well. And Neil Lennon, the manager at the time, had to issue a statement saying that he warned him about his behaviour and, you can't damage the reputation of the club. He said he's aware of that and the matter's dealt with. But, it was obviously, created massive attention at the time.
Mm. So, where is he now? I mean, there's no football career left, I presume?
No, he seems to have really spiraled in the last few years. He also has, so as I said, he only had one prior conviction in Ireland before last week for assault, but he is he was in the news in recent years for basically stalking his girlfriend in Scotland. Right. So he's been in other courts in other jurisdictions, basically.
And what happened to that case?
So
was there criminal charges taken?
There was criminal charges taken, yes. And he did serve jail time for harassing his former partner. And then he continued to contact her contrary to court orders and then was jailed again for that. So, then he was banned from contacting her family. So there was a lot of controversy in Scotland around that. I think, it was obviously a very nasty situation, but it continued for a few years because he didn't seem to be able to not.
And he has children, I think, himself. He's 3 children.
Yeah, he does, yeah. And, he's, in terms of what he's doing now, he's obviously back in Dublin. He has the bail address given in court last week was in the North Inner City, so in Summerhill Place, I believe. I think he's back living with family members. And he did talk about how he has undergone addiction treatment for alcohol and drug issues, and he's trying to get his life back on track. And the guards did, strangely as well, despite going into detailed evidence about the speeds and how he was taunting and driving past fire brigades. But that he did a runner, but when they did catch up with him when they were dealing with him, that he was a pleasure to deal with. That is said in court as well. So I suppose, in that sense, there was evidence given that he is trying to clean up his act and he's trying to move on. He being his, I think he's 36 now. So he is trying to.
So that appeal will come up and it'll be decided whether or not, of course, the state can appeal sentences as well. And the other side, if they don't believe they're long enough. Yeah. But anybody who's convicted is entitled to an appeal, as far as I know, or certainly can attempt that. So when that comes up, it'll be decided whether that 15 months was too long, given the factors around the offence, and his guilty plea obviously would go in his favour. But one way or another, it's unlikely that would be fully suspended. There probably could be a sentence awaiting in one way or another.
I think so. And the judge did give him credit for his guilty pleas. His defence told about how he's a father of 3, to answer your question earlier. The defence told how, he's battling his demons and he might need residential treatment, so it's going to rehab. But I think obviously when the reports came back that there had been drugs in his system after doing that test, that obviously wasn't, that didn't help his case either. So I'd imagine, he is likely to get some kind of sentence. But I suppose 15 months.
Seriously unlucky, they'll up it.
Yeah, well, this is it.
That can happen too, can't it?
Yeah, it can happen too. I don't know. Obviously we don't know what. But I would probably be surprised in this case if that was something. It's usually severe violence and all that kind of thing, isn't it? That they appeal those things, but you never know. So yeah, he probably is likely to serve a portion of it in jail, but then with standard remission and all that kind of thing, he's most likely not going to be in for too long.
So what's your favourite football team?
Well, I actually, Niall's going to be raging for not being here. When I was a teenager, I was obsessed with Liverpool. Absolutely obsessed with Liverpool, yeah. And I, to the point of, when you're in computer classes in school, I'd be everyone would be on Bebo. That was the thing at the time. And I'd be looking at Liverpool FC.
What about now?
I don't know. I don't know what happened. I think I
fell out of love with them.
You kind of, well, I used, so yeah, I was, Niall says it was because Steve Finnan left Liverpool. Right. That was because I was a big fan of his. him. He was a bit of an obscure fan obsession to have there. But I think when I started going, do you know when you're like I was working in shops in college and all those things, and you just discover going out, and I just kind of, then I became more of a, I don't know why.
Do you watch it now?
I do watch a little bit, but not. So I was genuinely obsessed.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know.
The Olympics over the summer and that.
Yeah, no, I'm big into sports. Like I went to the Olympics, athletics and GA, and I watch all sports really, but I just find, I don't know what it is about football over the last few years. It's not as interesting. No.
And are you listening to our colleagues who are actually next door as we speak? And we give them a shout out because they're getting going. But the Indo Sport, a new podcast. Have you been listening to it?
No, I haven't been listening to it.
I have.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, look at you now trying to get brownie points.
I have been listening to it because I was just interested to see how it was. Like, some of the content on it is completely alien to me, but I listen anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
But you'll have to listen. And
I will have to listen.
Give them a
yeah.
What do we call these things? What do we call them?
A plug?
A click, is it?
Yeah.
A click?
Yeah, well, I don't know, because we seem
stream.
to be...
It's a stream. It's a stream.
Yeah, well, we seem to be the only ever do when they're in trouble, because we had poor Kyle Hayes on there. Me and Niall were talking about him a few weeks ago, the Limerick hurler, and Niall was sort of slagging me for, claiming I was being more sympathetic to him because he plays GA.
You could probably do a full podcast on sports stars behaving badly or getting tangled up in criminality.
You could, yeah.
I often find that people absolutely love, and the perfect storm is when you have crime and celebrity meet.
Oh, they do, absolutely.
They are sort of stories that just absolutely really grip everyone.
Oh, 100%, because even in the Kyle Hayes case, he had a violent disorder that hit the headlines for a major incident in a nightclub. He was found guilty of violent disorder, and then he was back up for dangerous driving, and that's why we're talking about it. But the judge in the dangerous driving case was sort of a bit like, critical of saying, all the media are here when I've had much more serious cases before me in recent weeks. And then he sort of not backtracked, but then he sort of said, well, it's fine that they're here. But, it is that reason.
And you're judged harsher really by the public, aren't you? Because you're seen as having this talent, this skill, that you were gifted something and that you're throwing it away by
of course.
messing up and stuff.
Yeah, of course.
But I
it's
suppose sports people have a kind of a personality that must be quite, like, it's almost like to be, to put yourself in, to be a footballer in the Premier League, you have to live a particular way. You have to be almost addicted to the football, addicted to the sport, do you?
I think so. Well, I think it's just from like an early age, you have to
You're so focused. I can totally understand why they kind of fall into addiction issues. And I'd say it's probably boring when you're not actually playing or training. Yeah,
well, I think it's, and like the training schedules are grueling, and they don't actually have that much off time, but I suppose it's the pressure. Well, the footballers, poor Anthony Stokes, that was his issue, he wasn't paid enough. But that was where we were talking about with the GA, because Niall was suggesting that it should be someone of his, because the reason we were talking about Kyle Hayes was because he was nominated for Player of the Year. And it was literally weeks after he was in court again for dangerous driving while on a suspended sentence for a previous incident. And he was saying, should that be something that's where he just goes back into the team and is nominated for Player of the Year? But then GA isn't it's a voluntary organisation. But we all know that these top players are getting, money in terms of sponsorship and benefits and all that kind of thing. So it does pose the question, is how does that happen? Is it just is it because of their lifestyle? Is it because of the pressure, or is it just because?
Is Stokes earning these days? We don't know that.
We don't know
living.
that, though.
He's living with family, and he's obviously fighting to keep himself out of jail if he can. And all the rest of it. He's not in a great place, really.
No, he was. So no, he not that I know of. I guess he's living in Dublin 1 with family, according to the court. And I suppose you would imagine, would he have any money left if that's how he's living his life? Obviously, he would have been earning a lot in his career with Celtic, and
he's certainly not going to get any sponsorship deals, is he? I mean, Volkswagen aren't going to sponsor him.
No, of course not. No,
car, but
of course not. No, so he's certainly not. But then I suppose you look at other sports stars behaving badly, like Conor McGregor, and they're still earning a lot of money. So
I know,
it's I think maybe we might need to whip round for poor Anthony.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe Conor can give him a lend.
Anyway, look, we'll have a look and see how he does on appeal, and if he keeps himself out of jail, or if he is indeed going to spend some months behind bars. So thanks a million, Eimear.
No problem.
I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.